Okay, I'll ask it. What if you meet someone who checks all the Catholic boxes? Faith, values, family vision, but you're not attracted to them. This is the elephant in the room of Catholic dating. What if your heart says yes, but your eyes say, maybe? So, do sparks really matter, or can attraction grow in time? Could the person God has for you look different than you expected? When faith and values line up, but feelings don't, what then? What do you do if you're just not attracted to them at first? Does physical attraction really matter for a holy marriage? What if the spark never comes? Should you keep dating? We're answering the questions that everyone thinks about, but no one wants to ask. And don't worry, you're not shallow for asking this. You're human. So today, we are going there. And spoiler, this conversation may save you from walking away from a good relationship or from staying in the wrong one too long. We're going to look at what psychology says, what the church says, and what that actually means for your heart. So if you're ready, let's go. Welcome to the Catholic Couch, where faith meets psychology and real-life dating questions get real-life answers. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, mother, and yes, the woman who has counseled more people about awkward Catholic coffee dates than I ever thought was possible. Today we're tackling the elephant in the room. What if you find someone who checks all the Catholic boxes, faith, family, values, but you don't feel physically attracted? Do you give it time? Do you move on? And more importantly, what does Catholic teaching and psychology say about that spark or the lack of it? Here's the truth. Catholic dating talks don't usually talk about physical attraction. Asking about attraction doesn't make you unholy. It makes you human. And God designed attraction to play a role in love. If physical attraction didn't matter, Catholic dating apps wouldn't have profile pictures, just everyone's favorite encyclical. Let's start with how the church talks about attraction. John Paul II, in Love and Responsibility, reminds us that attraction isn't just about looks. He writes, attraction is the essence of love, for it is directed towards the true value of the person. In other words, attraction is a doorway that leads us deeper into the truth of who someone really is, body, soul, and spirit. So yes, being drawn to someone's smile matters, but if you only ever notice their smile when bring donuts to Bible study, we may have more to unpack. Layers of attraction. There are actually layers of attraction. Psychology and theology agree. We're drawn to people physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Think of it like a Venn diagram. Body, personality, and virtue. And when they overlap, that is where Catholic romance flourishes. Catholic dating doesn't ask us to ignore the body, but not to stop there either. We're discerning the whole person. Because if you only like someone's theology but cannot stand their laugh, that's not discernment. That's purgatory with a subscription plan. Before we start talking about modern relationships, let's begin with a little history. Across most of human history, marriages weren't chosen by the couple themselves. They were arranged by families, clans, or even political alliances. Love, if it came at all, was something expected to grow after the vows. In the Near East, in Greco-Roman society, and in first century Judaism, marriage was primarily a family affair, not a personal love story. It was about survival, lineage, and stability. So note, your great-great-great-grandparents weren't looking for sparks. Their parents were likely the OG Catholic match. Forget Netflix and chill. It was goats, dowries, and chill. Even today, arranged marriages are very common in South Asia. Between 2000 and 2012, studies in India showed that 31% of marriages were fully arranged without the bride's say. 63% were arranged but with her input, and only about 6% were freely chosen by the bride herself. Interestingly, when the bride had some say, even if marriages were technically arranged, those unions tended to be more relationally healthy than the ones where she had no input at all. So even within arranged models, freedom makes a difference. Some reports suggest arranged marriages worldwide have divorce rates as low as 4%, compared to the 46% so-called love marriages. But we need to be cautious here. Lower divorce doesn't always equal greater happiness. In many cultures, strong social or legal pressure makes divorce almost impossible. Still, it does remind us that marriage is built on commitment and community often endure, even when sparks fade. Japan gives us a case study in cultural transition. In the 1930s and 40s, most marriages were arranged. By the late 20th century, that number plummeted, and by 2005, only about 6% of marriages in Japan were arranged. In less than a century, the whole culture shifted from family-arranged unions to marriages chosen by the couple. And that same shift has happened in many places around the world. In the ancient Mediterranean world, even betrothal contracts were often binding, with families acting as negotiators. But as Christianity spread, something radical happened. By the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church required that marriage could only be valid if both parties freely consented. This was a groundbreaking shift. No longer could families coerce marriages. The church taught that true love, like Christ's love for his church, must be freely given. Basically, the Catholic Church was the first to say no consent, no sacrament. So what do we make of all this history? From a Catholic perspective, marriage is not just a social contract or a family alliance. It's a covenant between two free persons. That's why the church insists, and has for centuries, that marriage is invalid if it's forced. This shift from coerced marriages to freely chosen marriages reflects something profound. Our God values human dignity, freedom, and conscious self-gift. Love, to be real, must be chosen. In other words, Catholic marriage prep has always been clear. No free yes, no valid vows, no matter how good the dowry may be. The church was basically the original advocate for consent culture, long before hashtags. The church also points us to the ultimate model of marriage, Christ and his bride, the church. Ephesians 5 tells us that Christ gives himself to the church, and the church responds freely. That's the template for marriage. No coercion, no compulsion, but free, total, faithful, and fruitful self-gift. In Catholic theology, marriage isn't just about finding a spouse. It's about imaging Christ's covenant love for the world. So no, Jesus didn't get tricked into marrying the church. He chose it. He chose us with eyes wide open. And Christ stays faithful to his bride, even when we're not looking so lovable. Still, there are lessons worth learning from arranged marriage. Commitment came first, feelings often followed. Families and communities played a strong role in supporting the couple. Those insights can help Catholic couples today. Our culture often idolizes instant chemistry, but the wisdom of slow love, patient growth, and community support still echoes in Christian tradition. Love doesn't always begin with sparks. Sometimes it begins with steady faithfulness. That is why Catholic weddings often have a full church. The couple needs witnesses and a community, and let's be honest, free babysitters down the road. Marriage may start with two people, but it takes an entire parish community to keep it going. So how do we bring this forward into Catholic dating today? The church invites us to hold both truths together, freedom and structure. We don't want impulsive, superficial choices based only on looks. But we also don't want a feeling of a coerced match without any love. Catholic dating thrives when we choose freely, but within wise guardrails, mentors, families, communities, and prayers. That balance protects us from extremes and helps us to discern God's call with clear eyes and open hearts.
Are you a Catholic mom running on empty? If the laundry is piling up, meals feel like crisis management, and the guilt is louder than the chaos, you're not alone. And you're not failing, you're in survival mode. Introducing Survival Mode Homemaking for Catholic Moms, a compassionate, faith-integrated online course created by Catholic therapist and mom of 3, Amber Pilkington. This isn't a course about getting it all done. It's a course about doing what matters most when you have the least to give, blending Catholic theology, mental health science, and real-life homemaking wisdom. This course offers practical tools for meals, laundry, parenting, and peace. Through printable worksheets, spiritual encouragement, and step-by-step videos, this course helps Catholic women create gentle, grace-filled rhythms that honor their limitations and their vocation. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. To learn more, visit the Catholic Counseling Institute website and click on the Online Courses tab. Or check the show notes for the direct link. Survival Mode Homemaking for Catholic Moms. Because grace belongs in the mess, too.
And that's why Catholic dating can often feel like a group project, because in many ways it is. So yes, mom's opinion still matters, but let's be honest, attraction matters. God made us body and soul, and it's normal to want to feel drawn to the person we might marry. But here's the challenge. Our culture tells us if the spark isn't instant, it's not real. And that is not true. Sometimes attraction grows slowly. And as Catholics, we don't want to throw away a relationship that has a solid foundation on faith, values, and virtue just because the fireworks weren't there on date one. So now you might be wondering, why bring in psychological research here? Isn't that too superficial or secular? But remember, all truth is God's. And the church has always affirmed that faith and reason work together. And if St. Paul had had access to peer-reviewed journals, I am convinced he would have dropped a footnote in Corinthians. Think of psychology and theology like a married couple themselves. They're better when they work together, even if sometimes one talks more than the other. And so far we've looked at how marriages were formed historically and how the church insists on freedom and self-gift. But remember the elephant in the room. Attraction matters. We can't pretend that it doesn't. God made us body and soul. Being drawn to someone is part of the gift of marriage. At the same time, attraction alone can't carry a relationship. And the absence of initial sparks doesn't mean that there's no future. That's why we need to ask the question honestly, can attraction grow? Here's where the research can actually help us. These studies don't tell the whole story. Theology does that. But they give us real data about how people experience attraction, how it changes, and what helps it grow. And that matters because sometimes God may put someone in your life who shares your faith, values, and vision of family, but the chemistry feels small at first. And if we know that attraction can grow, and we know some ways to help it grow, it means that we might not walk away too prematurely. We can give grace and time to allow the love to deepen, and then with prayer and time, discern what God is calling us to in our vocation. So with that understanding, let's dare to ask the hard questions and get the answers that you really want to know. Husband and wives study. Let's talk about the research. A study of newlywed couples found that husbands stayed happier when their wives were viewed as physically attractive, but wives' happiness wasn't affected much by their husband's looks. In other words, guys, you're a little more visual than we ladies are. This doesn't mean women don't care about looks or that guys are shallow, but it shows that attraction may play a slightly different role depending on your gender, commitment, and attractiveness. One study found that the more attractive you find your partner, the more committed you feel. Attraction feeds commitment. But there's a twist. If one partner was considered very attractive, the other actually feels less secure. Why is that? Because when you think your spouse could have a million other options, it's hard to relax into that trust. So attraction matters, but humility and loyalty matter even more. Mismatched attractiveness. Another study looked at couples where one spouse was more attractive than the other. When wives were rated more attractive than their husband, both partners showed more positive behaviors. But when the husband was rated more attractive, more negative behaviors crept in. But what matters more is gratitude, affirmation, and remembering why you chose each other in the first place. Apparently, when the husband is the pretty one, things get tense. So guys, if you've got movie star looks, remember, you're called to be a saint, not a celebrity. Familiarity breeds attraction. Here's some good news for the slow burn folks. Research shows that simply spending more time with someone increases attraction. The more often we interact, especially in positive ways, the more we feel drawn to that person, which means the spark you didn't feel on date 1 could quietly grow on dates 2, 3, and 4. Think of it like Eucharistic adoration. Sometimes the beauty doesn't hit you instantly, but the more you spend time in their presence, the more your heart can shift. Good is beautiful. Another study shows that learning positive traits about someone like honesty or generosity literally makes them appear more attractive. Virtue doesn't just win in heaven. It changes how our brains process beauty here on earth. When you admire someone's heart, your eyes tend to follow. Which means, ladies, if he brings you to Chick-fil-A after a hard day, he might not have six-pack abs, but care. And guys, if she volunteers at the parish vacation Bible study, 12 toddlers, glitter glue, and snack time chaos, That holiness, that level of holiness might make her glow more than any Instagram filter ever could. Arranged versus love marriages. One fascinating study compared arranged marriages to those that started with the big fireworks of love. After about 10 years, both groups reported being equally satisfied. That means attraction and love don't always have to be instant. They can grow with time, commitment, and shared values. Sometimes the spark is slow, but it's steady. This doesn't mean I'm suggesting arranged marriages, but let's just look at what the studies show. Plenty of happily married couples started with a flicker that ended up with a bonfire. It's encouraging news for anyone whose first date involved an awkward silence, shared fries, and debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Spoiler, yes, pineapple absolutely belongs on pizza. Theology of the body. Now, let's bring in John Paul II's theology of the body. He reminds us that the body expresses the person. Attraction isn't meant to reduce someone to an object. It's meant to draw us into communion with the whole person. Love isn't something ready-made, he says. It's always a task, something we grow in. So attraction, too, can be something that deepens and matures as we learn to see the other person through God's eyes. Successful marriage isn't love at first sight. Thomas Aquinas reminds us that we can't love what we don't know. It may be attraction at first sight, but the love grows and follows. The Theology of Beauty, Augustine and Aquinas. St. Augustine once wrote, "Late have I loved you, beauty ever ancient, ever new." He reminds us that all beauty comes from God himself. St. Thomas Aquinas added that beauty is a transcendental, alongside truth and goodness. That means when we are drawn to beauty, we are actually being drawn towards God, who is beauty himself. Attraction then isn't shallow, it's a glimpse of God's radiance shining through another person. So yes, if you say, "Wow, she's beautiful," it's not just hormones or neurochemicals, it's theology, although hormones are definitely involved. In other words, when your heart skips a beat, it may not just be chemistry. It may also be Aquinas tapping you on the shoulder saying, "See, that's God's beauty shining through." Reframing attraction through a Catholic lens. When we think of attraction, our culture tells us it's about six-pack abs or Instagram filters, but Catholic theology reframes it. We don't just ask, am I attracted to him or her, but where do I see God's beauty shining through them? This shift takes attraction out of a shallow pool of a passing desire and places it in the river of vocation. The goal isn't to find someone perfect. It's to find someone in whom you can glimpse the face of God. And let's be honest, no one stays Instagram ready forever. Even Adam and Eve eventually got kicked out of Eden and discovered sweatpants. It's like spiritual LASIK. Once you start looking through God's eyes, you realize true beauty was right in front of you all along, even if it was wearing socks with Crocs. Attraction across the lifespan. Here's something we don't talk about enough in my physical attractiveness changes over time. Stress, illness, children, sleepless nights, and simply aging all leave their marks. And that's not a problem. It's part of God's design. Marriage vows already assume this when we promise to love in sickness and in health, in youth and in old age. The real question isn't whether your spouse's physical attractiveness will change or fade. It's whether your heart will keep learning to see the beauty in its new forms. If you think your spouse will look exactly the same after 20 years of raising kids, that is not discernment, my friends. That is a Hallmark movie marathon. Wrinkles, gray hairs, and dad bods aren't necessarily failures. They're Catholic participation trophies for surviving family life and aging. Especially for women, pregnancy and postpartum changes the body. Stretch marks, scars, and even sleepless nights aren't flaws. They're marks of sacrifice, symbols that say, this is my body, given for you, that another may live. In Catholic theology, that is not the absence of beauty. It's the presence of a deeper kind of beauty. And John Paul II would say the body reveals the person. And when that body has given itself for life, it reveals love at its highest form. Men, this means cherishing and affirming your wife's beauty is part of your vocation. Speak it, remind her, choose her again and again. Because the only six-pack she may have after kids is a six-pack of LaCroix in the fridge. And guess what? That's okay too. If you want to see true beauty, forget Instagram filters. Watch a mom sneak into mass with a diaper bag, 3 kids, and still manage to find the holy water font. Novelty and self-expansion. One of the strongest findings in relationship science is the self-expansion theory. Couples who do novel and exciting things together, things that stretch them, report higher closeness and satisfaction. That, my friends, is why the Bachelor producers always put skydiving or bungee jumping on date 1. Now, you don't have to risk your life together, but trying something new together actually boosts attraction. So yes, taking a salsa class together may actually help your marriage more than another Netflix binge, as if there's anything good on Netflix anymore, in my opinion. Unless, of course, you consider popcorn refills as an extreme sport. In other words, your date idea doesn't have to be skydiving. Even trying sushi for the first time counts. And if it doesn't work out, at least you've got a good story. Excitation transfer. Now, this one is fun. Back in the 1970s, research sent men across a shaky suspension bridge. The ones who met an attractive woman on the bridge were more likely to call her afterwards than the men who met her on solid ground. Why? Their bodies were full of adrenaline, and they misattributed that nervous system arousal, the fight or flight, to attraction. Later studies at amusement parks found the same thing. Roller coasters boost perceived attractiveness. Translation. If you're nervous on a first date, it might not be the coffee. It might be your nervous system doing you a favor. So yes, scary dates can help chemistry. Just make sure it's a safe roller coaster, not a parish carnival ride held together with duct tape and a prayer. Another fascinating study shows that when people move in sync, dancing, rowing, or even walking in step, they report feeling closer and more connected. Dancing in particular releases endorphins, which help bond people and increase feelings of attraction. So yes, those wedding receptions where everyone line dances to shout, turns out the science approves. Couples who dance together might not always stay on beat, but it helps them stay together. And if you have 2 left feet, don't worry. The point isn't looking like Dancing with the Stars. It's that you both felt equally awkward together. One of the most famous experiments in psychology is the 36 questions. Strangers who went through these guided, vulnerable questions felt significantly closer afterwards, and some even fell in love. Why? Because vulnerability builds intimacy, and intimacy makes people more attractive to us. For Catholic couples, this means having the courage to share appropriately, not just fun facts, but hopes, struggles, and faith. Think of the 36 questions as vulnerability icebreakers. Less, what's your favorite color? And more, so when was the last time you wept during adoration? Acts of service and volunteering. Here's the last one. Doing good together. Studies show that volunteering and acts of service increase closeness, compassion, and overall couple well-being. When you serve side by side, whether it's helping a parish event, feeding the hungry, or visiting the homebound, you don't just grow spiritually, you often grow more attracted to one another. Seeing your partner's generosity and actions is one of the most beautiful things in the world. So yes, the couple that hands out donuts together after Mass might just have a higher chance of staying together, especially if they save each other the last sprinkle. Nothing says romance like hairnets and plastic gloves at the parish fish fry. Forget candlelight dinners. The science shows that love grows over deep fried tilapia. Recap the 5 practices. Let's recap these 5 research-backed ways to help attraction grow. Try something new together. Add some safe excitement. Move in sync. Share deeply with guided questions and serve together. Every single one of these has research behind it, and every single one of them lines up beautifully with Catholic wisdom about self-gift and growing in love. You don't have to wait passively for sparks. You can actually practice attraction. So yes, romance really can start on a roller coaster, during line dancing, or while holding a soup ladle. The truth is, sparks aren't just about fireworks. Sometimes they're about synchronized salsa steps or making eye contact over a box of canned green beans at the parish food pantry. But let's talk about something a lot of women don't realize. Hormonal contraceptives, whether you're using them as contraceptives or for something else, can actually change mate preferences. Research has shown that women on the pill sometimes chose partners differently than women who were not. And when they later stopped taking it, they may notice a shift in attraction. This is one of the reasons, in her great wisdom, the Catholic Church teaches against contraception. It's not just for moral reason, but because they can literally interfere with how we experience attraction and intimacy. So if you believe that you need to take a hormonal contraceptive pill for reasons other than contraception, I'd invite you to check out Napro Technology. You might be amazed at how many of the other therapeutic reasons can be solved by root causes and in ways that are better for your overall health and relationships. So if you ever wondered why your college boyfriend seemed perfect at the time, but less so after you stopped the pill, it might not just be because your mother's prayers are being answered. It turns out the pill can change attraction, which means your chemistry class may have more influence on your dating life than you thought. Testosterone and desire. For both men and women, hormones play a role in attraction. Low testosterone in men is linked to low desire, less energy, and even less motivation for intimacy. For women, some studies show that testosterone therapy can increase desire when it's unusually low. The takeaway: if you're struggling with attraction to anyone, it's not always a spiritual or emotional issue. Sometimes it's medical, and a doctor's visit could be part of good discernment. So yes, sometimes the real obstacle isn't just romance, it's the hormones. A blood test may be more useful than another late night heart-to-heart. Translation: if you feel zero spark, it might not be the other person. It might be your testosterone quietly waving a white flag. Antidepressants and SSRIs. One thing many people don't realize is that common antidepressants, especially SSRIs, often affect desire and attractions. Studies show they can lower libido, delay orgasm, or dampen emotional intimacy. That does not mean that you shouldn't take them if you need them. Mental health is important. Never stop any medication without talking to your doctor. But it does mean that sometimes attraction struggles are about medication, not the right match. And that's worth talking honestly about with your doctor. If you've ever thought, I love my husband, but ever since starting this medication, he ranks slightly below lasagna on my excitement list, it might be a medical side effect, not a marriage crisis. Sleep and stress are two of the biggest unspoken factors in attraction. Research shows that poor sleep lowers female desire and distorts men's perception of interest from women. God designed our bodies to need rest, which means taking care of your sleep is not just physical self-care, it's also relational stewardship. So yes, the most Catholic thing you can do for your relationship sometimes is take a nap. And relational attractiveness might just start with a good 8 hours of sleep. Want more romance? Try going to bed at 10 instead of midnight. It turns out the real love potion might be your body's natural melatonin, spiritual and physical care. Attraction doesn't happen in a vacuum. Taking care of your body and soul makes it easier to give and receive love. Regular exercise, eating well, and sleep set the stage biologically. And spiritually, confession, prayer, and adoration tune your heart to see others through God's eyes. The Holy Spirit really does help us see the deeper beauty in our spouse. So yes, squats and rosaries, both are valid to strengthen your relationship. Think about it this way. Grace and cardio have one thing in common. They both work better if you actually show up. Guardrails and attraction. Now, a quick word about guardrails. Ignoring attraction completely, well, that is also risky. It can lead to what I call roommate marriages, where you're more like co-parents than spouse. Idolizing looks is equally risky. It can leave your marriage shallow and unstable. The balance is seeing the whole person, body, mind, and soul, and choosing to keep rediscovering beauty in them as they change. It's like Goldilocks, not too shallow, not too blind, just right. Except instead of porridge, you are discerning a vocation. Ignoring attraction completely is like ignoring a fire alarm. Eventually, it'll catch up with you. Catholic encouragement. Let's not forget the saints who lived this out. Saints Louis and Zélie Martin, the parents of Saint Therese, didn't have a glamorous romance. Their attraction grew out of daily faithfulness, prayer, and sacrifice. Holiness was their love language, and they made their marriage radiant. So no, they didn't meet on a beach with the Nicholas Sparks soundtrack. They met in real life with real work, real prayer, and probably an occasional argument about the laundry. that was handled effectively and with repair. Louis and Zell prove that sanctity, not sparks, is what actually lasts. Sparks can grow. So here's the takeaway. The spark matters, but it doesn't have to be instant. And it is okay to consider physical attractiveness and what the research can and cannot tell us. Research, theology, and real-life Catholic marriages all show that attractiveness can grow over time through novelty, vulnerability, service, and grace. If you're discerning marriage and the spark isn't there yet, don't panic. You may just need room to breathe. Think of it like starting a campfire. Sometimes the flames roar right away. Other times you need to blow gently on the embers and avoid dumping your entire water bottle on them in frustration. If you're ready to try this in your own dating or discernment, I've put together a few free resources for you. The famous 36 questions from Psychology Research, plus a Catholic adapted version I created for couples who want to weave faith into their conversations. These questions build closeness, foster vulnerability, and help you see beauty in the person God may be calling you to love. You can download it for free using the link in the description. They're real questions that lead to real closeness. Think of them like relationship icebreakers. Less small talk about the weather and more talk about the important things like your soul. So whether your attraction story starts with sparks or slow embers, remember, beauty matures, virtue deepens, and God himself is the source of all love. Keep your eyes open for his beauty in the person in front of you. It's okay to value physical attraction in relationship. Just make sure you give it time to grow. And remember, no matter where you are in your journey, I will always leave a place for you on the Catholic couch.